Today we're gonna get into a pretty provocative idea that's been bubbling up in some of the most powerful corners of the tech world. It's this belief that our current form of democracy, well, that it might just be obsolete, and that it's actually holding us all back. And this quote, wow, this is really what kicks the whole thing off. It's from the tech billionaire Peter Thiel way back in 2009. It just perfectly frames the central conflict we're digging into today. This idea, that our most fundamental political systems are completely at odds with progress. Okay, so what is the actual logic here? I mean, why would some of the most successful innovators on the planet look at democracy not as the foundation of their success, but as, a bug in the system? Let's unpack their diagnosis. So at its heart's argument is that democracy is just inefficient by its very design. He's basically saying that by catering to the short term, and let's be honest, often emotional whims of the majority, it puts the brakes on the kind of big long-term complex thinking we need for real innovation. The argument even goes a step further, suggesting that real power is already held by elites, and democracy is just this comforting story we tell ourselves.
And you gotta understand, this isn't just Peter Thiel going off on his own. His view is actually part of a much wider trend you see in Silicon Valley. It comes from a culture that just loves elegant, optimized design. And when you look at things from that perspective, the absolute messiness of politics, well, it looks less like a feature and more like a total system failure. And you can see here, this critique shows up in a few different flavors. You've got Thiel with his very direct challenge. Then there's someone like Balaji Srinivasan who basically argues for exit. The idea is, why even try to fix a broken system when you can just build a new one? He talks about a network state, a kind of digital-first society people can just opt into. And then you have Elon Musk, who's not a fan of representatives and seems to prefer a more direct, poll-based kind of democracy. Three very different ideas, but they all come from that same place of frustration. So why is this idea getting so much traction? Well, it's kind of perfect storm. First, you've got this natural tech elitism, this mindset that, hey, if you can design something as complex as a social network or a reusable rocket, you probably shouldn't be held back by politicians. You mix that with this widespread fatigue we all feel over political gridlock, and then you sprinkle in this growing suspicion that our votes don't really matter anyway, because the real decisions are being made behind closed doors. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question: if the diagnosis of democracy's flaws is actually right, if it is inefficient and messy and prone to populism, does that mean the whole system is just broken beyond repair?
And this right here is such a brilliant way to flip the whole problem on its head. See, we tend to think of democracy as a system for picking the absolute best, the most brilliant, the most capable leader. But what if that's not its real job? What if its most critical function is actually to be a system for getting rid of the absolute worst ones?
Exactly. So the really crucial point is to reframe how we think about democracy. It's not an optimization engine designed for maximum progress. It's an essential risk management system. Its number one value isn't guaranteeing the best possible outcome, but preventing the most catastrophic failures. It is, quite literally, a safety net.
And this isn't just some abstract theory, These are the real, tangible tools, the nuts and bolts of that safety net. Regular elections, that's the main tool. Impeachment, that's your emergency brake. An independent judiciary, a free press that holds people accountable, and of course, term limits. They all serve one ultimate purpose: to stop any one person or group from getting unchecked power and never letting go. So this is where it gets really interesting, where these two big ideas collide. And what's so fascinating is that you don't actually have to reject the tech world's diagnosis of the problem to be really skeptical of the cure they're proposing.
This right here gets to the absolute heart of the counterargument. Can we all agree that democracy is inefficient and messy? Yeah, probably. Are elites inevitable? Maybe. Can voters be irrational? You bet. You can concede all of that. But the proposed cure, to dismantle the very safety net that contains all those flaws, that's where the real danger is. It's like a doctor correctly identifying you have a cold but prescribing poison as the remedy.
I mean, just think about it. What happens when you cut that safety net? Well, elites start picking their own successors, creating a closed-off, self-perpetuating class. There's no way to correct for big mistakes or root out corruption. You can't get rid of failed leaders. The system just loses its ability to adapt and becomes incredibly fragile, just waiting for one bad decision to cause a total collapse. the risk just goes through the roof.
Okay, so to make this feel less like a philosophical debate and more like a real-world thing, let's look at a fascinating comparison that really puts this whole safety net idea to the test. We're going to compare the United States and South Korea. Now, this is so interesting because at first glance, South Korean politics can look really chaotic, right? But what you see is that its safety net has actual teeth. Impeachment works. Powerful leaders who mess up or are corrupt actually get removed and even go to jail. Now compare that to the US, where the system looks a lot more stable on the surface, but those removal mechanisms are arguably weaker. Impeachment is often more about political theater than a real check on power. It makes you ask a really important question. Is the messy system actually the stronger, more resilient one, just because its safety net actually works?
So where does all this leave us? We've got the tech world's vision for clean, efficient design on one side, and then the messy, chaotic, frustrating reality of democracy on the other. What's the final verdict here?
I think this quote just nails it. It perfectly brings the two arguments together. It admits the critique. Yep, democracy can be slow and inefficient. It is, in a lot of ways, a pretty stupid system. But the key insight is that its flaws aren't bugs, they're features. They are the very things that prevent a much, much worse outcome, the permanent monopoly of power. And that, right there, is the genius of it. It's kind of like a ship that wasn't designed for speed, but was built to survive any storm. All the arguments, the inefficiency, the messiness, that's not the sound of the system failing. That's the sound of the safety net working, of it absorbing shocks and preventing a total shipwreck. And that brings us to the end. The final thought we want to leave you with is this. Take a look at the institutions that make up that democratic safety net right where you live. How strong are those threads? Are they being taken care of, or are they starting to fray? Thanks for tuning in.